You're listening to episode number 47 of the UpRev Ninja podcast, and I'm your host, Tom Hudson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the UpRev Ninja podcast. If this is your first time listening, thanks for joining us. This show is produced each week with the single intent of discovering the tips, tricks, hacks, and lessons learned from our guests that has catapulted them into living the best version of themselves. Join your host, Tom Hudson, as he continues his search for the best methods to uprev his life. Now, let's dive into the show.
Maggie is a leading global authority on career development for women in male-dominated industries. She's the author of the book Up the Ladder in a Skirt, which is hailed as a book for women in challenging roles globally by business leaders, movers, and shakers. A mechanical engineer who climbed to the top of the leadership ladder, Maggie was the executive chairman of a large agricultural company responsible for the 75% increase in the retention of staff through career development pathways by the age of 32. Maggie is a sought-after consultant in the oil and gas, agricultural, manufacturing, and automotive industries. Having achieved goals such as being the youngest member of the Plastics Pioneers Education Initiative, which went into companies such as Monsanto and Nilex, she has directly impacted the career choices and progress of over 10,000 women in over 32 countries around the world. With a deep commitment to diversity and well-being, she is an ambassador for sustainable career and business development for women the world over. Hey, today on the UpRev Ninja podcast, I've got Maggie Georgopoulos. How are you doing today, Maggie?
I'm good, thanks, Tom. It's really great to speak to you.
It's awesome to hear you this time.
It's that too. As I said, second time lucky.
Hey, we all have these technical challenges sometimes. But anyway, I read your bio out to my audience, and I am really excited to speak with you today. I mean, there's a lot in that bio that we can, dive into, but sometimes we go a completely different direction on the show. But why don't you tell us who you are and how you got to the point where you're at in your life?
Well, I suppose I often talk about being a bit of a free spirit and occasionally a travel bum, but I'm not really those things. They're just my sub-personalities, so to speak. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade who became the executive chairman of the board of a large agricultural company by a kind of accidental route. So I became an engineer. I worked in automotive. I kind of was enjoying it, but not enjoying it, because if anyone's ever worked in automotive and worked for an actual automotive manufacturer, you'll discover that you either end up in an area where you're dealing with a product that's already designed and you're basically begging someone in another country not to change things, or you end up in a design department but you get given a door handle in a door trim, or the trim that goes around the radio, and that's what you're designing, and it becomes a little bit disappointing, particularly when you've just come out of university and you thought, wow, I'm actually going to get to design stuff. So I moved to a company that works with agricultural plows, and with the move I stepped up a management level. So I moved in to become the assistant production manager. And then I moved from there to another company that worked in agriculture, but this time actually grew the product. So I moved out of doing design work altogether and actually moved into human resources, which was another bit of an accidental move because I got involved in training engineering apprentices in the previous company. And from that got involved in, working on training for companies, and so moved to this new company who grew lettuce, and they did from the farm all the way through to basically selling it at the wholesale market. And I ended up becoming the executive chairman of their board, which was quite an interesting journey for a city slicker and a female. Because the board was all male. I still remember one of the, how you have those moments and you're in a new job and you make one of those amazing gaps. So on one of my first couple of days in that job, I'm walking through the actual area where they clean the salad mixes down and then get them ready to be boxed up to go out to the wholesale market. And there's this production line that's been designed, and I'm looking at the production line and I'm talking to the operations manager who's showing me through. And without even thinking about it, I've gone, who was the idiot who designed this process line? They've got it all, round backwards. You've got the rivets on the inside. You need them out because you're actually tearing your lettuce up when you don't need to be, and blah, 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 just talking about what's going on. And the guy's going, well, that would be me.
And
I'm like, oh, crap.
can I put my foot any further into my mouth?
It's like just a moment why I just open my mouth up a little wider and just shove the whole leg down while I'm at it. So it had those sort of interesting moments. So I hadn't necessarily endeared myself right from the go-get, but I did end up leading the board and having some rather interesting experiences with it. But I chose to step out and take on a year leading up a large not-for-profit organisation, which kind of led me to where I am now in a really roundabout way, because I chose not to go back into corporate. Even though that opportunity was there, I chose to actually quit my job, sell my house, hop on an aeroplane and just go see what was out there to figure out what it was I really wanted to do. Because I realised that even though I was really successful and I was doing all this great stuff working in male-dominated fields, as a female, and I'm rocking it fine, I was doing what everyone had said I should do because I happened to do well at it. It's like, oh yeah, you're doing well, you should do this. Oh, you're doing really well at that. Why don't you do that? It wasn't designed. It wasn't what I necessarily wanted to do.
Oh, no.
So it was that sudden wake up moment. Hang on a tick. What is it I do actually want to do? So hence the travel bum thing comes in, because I set up a business which up until a couple of years ago has kind of been a bit of a hobby because I didn't use it full time. I used it to pick up contracts, and I worked in oil and gas, in education, in countries all around the world. Like, we were in Libya, in Iraq, in Tanzania, in the UAE, in Kazakhstan, South Korea.
You're going to places. You're going to places. Not only are you in male-dominated industry, but you're going to places that, okay.
Yeah. I did. Did I mention that I'm slightly crazy? I did mention that. Didn't I?
That's okay. That's all right.
Well, actually, no, I'm not. I have a sense of adventure, and I just really wanted to learn. Because what I discovered as I was traveling is by taking on these contracts, it enabled me to, so I talk about the fact that even if we take in the last couple of years where I've stepped in more full time to building my business up because I want to be able to do more to help, and I can only do that from a place of real abundance, I've probably worked maybe 5 out of the last 11 years. And I've been able to do that because I, set myself up well before I semi-retired, and I've had these contracts in these interesting places. But it's then allowed me to go to other interesting places and actually work with people to help them learn and set up things that they can then continue on without my presence being anywhere near the place. So it's, being able to empower them to build up their own communities and build up their own micro businesses and things like that, and really grow it. And that's where I discovered my real passion lay. I really enjoy working with people and educating them and watching them grow, and then being able to learn back from them, because I learned so much from being in these different cultures, because we got such a preconception of what it'd be like in Libya, or what it'd be like in Saudi Arabia, or what it'd be like in Iraq. And people are always shocked for me to say things like, well, no, the women didn't necessarily wear abayas or hijabs were in Iraq when I was there. Yes, they wore short skirts. Oh, and by the way, I lived in a Christian region of the country.
Right.
And everyone's like, what? So that's what I like about going to places like that.
Yeah, and I agree. It's a number of years ago I spent some time, and it was in the summer, just to be clear, in Latvia, and so there was sunlight. But it's so far up north, I actually got there on summer solstice, and the sun didn't go down. But it was interesting because the family I stayed with, one of the days they took me around Riga and showed me, some of the, I can't remember what they were called, but like the homes that they lived in when they were under Soviet occupation. Yeah. But yet they were telling me the propaganda that they were told about the U.S. And, I shared stories with them, and they also said, we didn't work 100-hour work weeks like, what you were told. So it is interesting because all you get is what you read, and when you actually go there and experience it, it's a completely different world. So, and traveling is so important to me because of that. So, Maggie, you got so much experience, all the way from someone building a lettuce hopper incorrectly to going to Iraq and everything. But looking back on all of this, and even where you're at now, what's kind of held you back from, at one time you did this proverbial checklist. You got out of school, you went to uni, you got this job, and then you took this like, hey, wait, what do I want to do? What's held you back in your life? Procrastination, shame, embarrassment, fear, anything like that?
Well, there's been many moments of many things. I think the biggest one and the most recent one that I tend to really focus on these days is when I was 17 years old, I was actually first diagnosed as being bipolar. And I've been diagnosed again 3 times since, contrary to the UK health system saying, oh, no, we don't really need to put that on your medical records.
Wow.
So, yeah, but you see, it's things like that kind of led to this real moment of absolute vulnerability, because all the way through my career, so, when I talked about, that time of being, the executive chairman in an all-male board, and I was involved in many boards where I was still the odd one out, many levels at that time, and everything I've done, not a single person outside of my family knew that I was bipolar, other than the doctor, obviously, but only my family unit knew about it. And I didn't actually even realize until 18 months ago when, I handed a draft copy of my book at the time to my best friend, that I hadn't actually told her, which was in itself, really telling about how far I'd taken it into myself, because what I knew is that if anyone knew, it would basically trash my career.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry.
So it was like, because, and I still get it to a certain extent, but what I've realized is I'm in a position where I can actually stand up and talk, and I can speak about what this means, and the fact that, yes, we're talking about it, but it's still not enough. And that's the reason why I've spoken out. But it did shut me down for a period of time, because it was like, oh my God, I'm writing about this in a book. I'm about to talk about it on Facebook Live because I need to take that step. And then I'm about to talk about it for the first time in public. And in each of those steps, particularly when I was writing about it in my book, I shut down because I was so afraid of what was going to happen. And that all comes from, everything that's built in. It's like, well, if you're bipolar, you can't function, because aren't those bipolar people the people that get really, really crazily depressed and want to kill themselves, and they can't really function in the real world? And it's like, not all of us.
Yeah,
it's...
Well, and that's what media and movies and stuff, that's how it portrays
that's what they do.
So that's the definition on our head. Just going back to, like you said, like everyone in Iraq has really long skirts and hijabs.
Yeah.
So
and it was just, coming through all that, and it's like how do I talk about this so that I can actually, because what I am about is about being authentic. I mean, I sold the house and hopped on that airplane because I wanted to be authentically me, and I thought I was being, until I realized that there was still a part of me that I kept shut inside because it had become such a habit. I'd done it for 45 years basically, or not quite, because I didn't find out till I was 17, but 30 odd years. I'd kept this inside myself. I hadn't shared it with anyone. If I was having an episode, I didn't share it. I had a period of time while I was the executive chairman of the board where I was actually suicidal, but no one knows. And that was because it was kept there, and it was kept there because if I was to speak out, I was going to make myself so vulnerable it wasn't funny. And it was like, can I really do this? And in the end, the decision I made was, if I don't, I can't move forward.
Right.
And, to me, in some ways, that represents nearly every point in my life where I've had something like that. So before I stepped away from what I was doing, in my executive career, I had a moment where it was like, do I really want to throw away all the, the toys, the trappings, all the bits and pieces that say I'm successful? And it's like, I don't know if I can. And once again, it's that social conditioning. The social conditioning is, this shows that I'm successful. If I throw it away, then I'm telling everyone I'm not successful. Is that what I'm doing? It's, you have those conversations with yourself, and they can actually become quite constraining, because it's like, am I really willing to be, different? And at the end of the day, the answer for me is yes, because when I don't do that, I end up just feeling like something's not right.
Right. Well, this is a kind kind of a personal question,
Yeah.
but obviously that's okay at the moment considering the topic. But have you found, I don't know what triggers episodes, but have you found now that you've accepted it and you're open and vulnerable about it, that so it's happened less frequency?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
Running a business is not necessarily the most balanced way, particularly for someone who's like me. So I have a tendency to be hypermanic or hypomanic. So I'll go long periods of time where I can quite literally ping off walls. And I was talking to someone earlier today about that. My record still stands at 5 days without sleep and, things like drugs, caffeine or anything like that helping, which is part of the reason I was able to achieve a lot of the things I've been able to achieve. Now, when you're working in a business, that can become a dangerous balance to actually make. But one of the benefits that's actually come out about me being open about it is, for the first time in my life, I'm actually medicated. So it's a little bit more balanced. I still have the ups and downs, but it's a little bit more balanced. And I'm also more aware of what's about to trigger something or what's triggering something, so I can prepare for it.
Okay.
So, and I mean, if I'm honest, I've been doing it all my life. I have actually been balancing it or preparing it or holding it off. And, it happens not just with being bipolar, it happens with a lot of mental illnesses. You've got people who are in the workforce who are effectively high functioning because they have major depression or anxiety or whatever, but they're able to actually show up every day, do their job, seem perfectly, in inverted commas, normal, and yet they will go home and the collapses will happen in that space so that nobody sees it. And part of that is because of the stigma associated.
Yeah, I know alcoholism, that's a big thing as well. So, not that I don't want to continue down that path, but like if we just kind of take a slight turn here, you got a lot going on here, running your own business, the book that you've written and the travel and everything like that. And, and also having, this condition. I'm trying to think here. How do you manage all of this? A lot of people, there's exercise, meditation, journaling. What's your go-to method? Like, I'm going to take the week off. What is it?
I wouldn't say there's one go-to method. I think it depends on where I am at a given point in time. What I do try to do, and what I've tried to do more recently in particular, is I try to get regular exercise. That's really important to me. And it's been really great for me that I've got a really supportive partner as well. It's not something I say you have to go out and get, but having a supportive person in your life really helps. So I haven't, my closest friend back in Australia is amazing and has always been really supportive, even when she didn't know. So she's, and my partner also, which is the reason why I live in, the UK rather than a nice sunny location. He also has that same support. He's there and he knows what to do and say to kind of help me along. And he also knows when to back up and just let it kind of happen.
Right.
But what I have felt is, because I am very achievement orientated, it's like I am not going to let this be who I am or define who I am or define how things go, because who I am is somebody who actually, goes out there, works with people and actually achieves things. And as I said, I've now stepped further out into being even more authentic about it, because I've basically exposed all of me now. It's the good, the bad and the very ugly, so to speak. But I do that. I journal, and also I look at what I'm doing. And if I have a period where what I just need is some time out, I take it. And that's one of the advantages of me working from home in my own business.
Right.
The fact that I know what my business schedule is. I know where I can actually do something like that. So recently I was traveling around the States. I attended a few conferences, got to speak at a couple of events, was promoting my book a little bit, and also catching up with some people that I'd connected with over there. And I decided in the middle of it to take 5 days out, because I landed in this gorgeous little, place on the coast in Florida. And I just thought, do you know what? I think it's a good time to actually take some time out.
That's good.
And I could do that because I knew where my business was at. I knew what my business could take with me taking the time out, and I knew what I needed as well.
So kind of what I'm hearing, and it sounds like, maybe this is a judgment statement for other people, but it sounds like you're more connected with your needs and the balance between that work-life balance. Whereas a lot of people, they just go, and then they have this intense burnout.
Yeah.
So, it sounds like you've got that under control, and that's great. And that's something everyone can take a lesson with and try to implement in their life. Just listen to their bodies and their mind. And
it's something that we've got a little bit more freedom to do these days. I think that's shifting. So, the more we actually are open about it, the more that's going to shift.
I agree. Yeah, and the workforce is so different now. I mean, there's so many more knowledge workers. Yeah, that's the term I've used here in the U.S. anyway. So, but yeah, I mean, you can, as long as you have your laptop and an internet connection, you can do this wherever. So.
Yep. Exactly. So we can talk even though we're on opposite sides of the world.
Absolutely, yeah. So, Maggie, you've already kind of covered some of this, but what kind of personal habits do you have that you feel contribute to your continual growth? And obviously, you've got a partner as well. So, what kind of habits do you have to make sure that your relationship's intact, your business, you personally?
Yeah, I think to me, and it's part of what I teach in what I do, is the biggest one is knowing and understanding yourself and how you interact with others. So from doing that, for example, I'm able to have conversations with my partner where I can go, we need to have a bit of a chat. And he's like, I said, look, I understand what you're trying to do here, but right at the moment, what I need is I just need you to listen to me. I don't need you to solve this problem.
It's a typical man thing.
Yeah, do you know what? There is a part of me that'll actually go, yes, that is, but I do that too at times. But it's just, but it's having those conversations, because often what we do is instead of having that conversation, we get frustrated. And it's like, well, you just stop trying to solve the problem. Instead of actually saying, can you please just listen to me because that's what I needed. So it's about the language we use as well. And I think by understanding yourself and how you work and what you need, you're better able to then communicate that to others. And it also means you're more open to actually taking in what others might need. So, for example, I have this habit of I'm used to a debating, argumentative type conversational style. So I'll cut in on my partner quite often, for example, and he likes to be able to get out what he has to say without being interrupted. So that really annoys him. And it's kind of like, oh no, I've done it again, haven't I? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, okay, I promise I'm going to keep my mouth shut and just listen for the next 5 minutes. Go. Right. So these are conversations that you learn to have. And I think that helps to make a difference. And it's not just something that you do in a relationship. It's something that you do in a workplace. It's something you do with people that you have business with. It's something that you do with your friends. Because if you're willing to listen to what the other person needs and also take into account what you need and actually have that open conversation about it, it makes it so much easier to actually hold things together. And it also means that you have the right internal conversation with yourself. So it's like, do I really need to sit down today and spend the next 12 hours just trying to get through what I have to do? Let's have a look at what my priorities are. Yes, will this best serve me in order to get those priorities out? Maybe not. Okay, I'm going to break it up. So you can actually have those conversations with yourself, so to speak, as well.
Right.
And I think that's important. To me, that's about the only way to do it. That and the fact that I could use someone to clean my study up, but that's another thing.
Yeah, it is funny, though, like the whole, learning how to listen to yourself and how to communicate, because it's a skill that, it's very hard to teach, I believe. I mean, you can teach some basics of it, but a lot of it is, we all see the world through our different set of lenses, and we've got, different childhoods and everything. So everything we experience is completely different than the next person.
Yeah.
And trying to explain yourself when you're coming from a completely different world. Yeah, we are from different worlds, and it does get difficult.
No, it's extremely difficult. And I think on some levels, for me, there are days when it's so much easier, because all I do is I sit there. For example, I often get the debates, how could you go and work in Saudi Arabia? Look at their human rights record, look at what they're doing to women, etc. And my comment back is, why should I deny the women that I get to interact with the opportunity to interact and learn from me, just because I don't agree with the politics of the country? Because if I was going to go for that, I wouldn't travel to actually, I think I'd have to find a cave somewhere, pronounce that it was my own independent nation and didn't have anyone in charge of it, because I don't agree with the policies in any country in the world in its entirety. So, yeah, but it just makes me realize that in order to be able to sit down and explain how you can do stuff like that, you've really got to, one, stop and listen to why they're asking the question so that you can answer it from the right perspective in the first place. And that's not easy. I'm the first to admit I still have a long way to go on it. I'm learning.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very easy for us to get into that, get defensive, like, oh, well, why are you questioning me? But, you know, going back to your point, like, you know, Saudi Arabia, the way they treat women. But here's the thing, and I love the attitude and the approach you have, and I have a similar approach. Like, if I can improve one person's life by anything, you know, like if I can enlighten them for whatever, I feel like I've done my job, you know?
Yeah.
And it's it sounds very similar to what you felt like going there. If I can have impact on one person's life.
Yeah.
So.
You know, prior to me going out, the particular course that I was running had been piped through from the men's university into the women's university. So they got to watch a screen and listen to voices coming through.
Oh, wow.
And that was how they were being trained. And we were training them to do something where they're supposed to be interactive.
Oh,
right.
Wow,
So to me, it's like, no, I'm more than happy to go over there and do it's not like I'm moving there to live, and it's not like I'm adopting their policies, but not just that, I've learnt so much from them and just how amazing they are and what it is they do. And it taught me something else again, you know, which comes back to what we're talking about. It taught me that once again, you always end up looking at something through a cultural overlay, and you know, their cultural overlay is different. They've had a different life, and yes, they're trying to change things, but they're trying to change things that move in time with the country that they live in and the culture that they live in, rather than the unfortunately rather bombastic way some of us Westerners can do, where we kind of feel that we can go in there and it's almost like rolling a bowling ball at a set of pins, knocking them all over and go, right, now you can fix it.
Right, yeah.
It's like, that's not how it works.
No, not at all, but some people think it does, but I'm with you. Completely with you. So, Meg, what are you currently working on in your life that you're trying to get to the next level?
Well, as I said, I've just had my book come out, Up the Ladder in a Skirt, and I'm working on my course, my online course, and getting that out so that what I can do is connect with more women around the world to actually help it become a collaborative and collective growth, as opposed to, you know, I'm one individual, I've got something that I want to talk, but I want to share it and I want it to be even better and greater and grow even further. So as I said, and through that, because I've always been about working with other communities and stuff like that, I still support a lot of the charitable organisations I used to work with. So to me, it's this double whammy. I grow my business and I grow the contacts and I learn through people and they learn through me. And then I am actually providing things to organisations like there's the Unleash Women's Leadership Fund, which is where they take females from communities, they educate them, set them up with a micro loan, they get their business running, they repay that loan, they then make a loan to another person within that community. So through their leadership and within their communities, they help actually take their communities out of poverty. And then so things like that. And through all of those little connections, I just feel like I get to grow so much more and I get to learn so much more. And
I definitely believe that's where everything, anytime that you're trying to make a shift and improve the world, I think starting at that community level is, one of the biggest impacts. So I really like that approach. Well, let's say I'm a member out in the audience today and I'm listening to the show, and I could be a guy, a male or a female, but I'm like, I'm interested in this, in the STEM, like science, technology, engineering, and math, but it's heavily dominated, with men or whatever it is. What kind of guidance would you give that person, that are kind of held back by fear or whatever, and they're just like, how do I even get started? How do I get my foot in the door?
Well, first of all, follow your dreams. Don't let anyone else ever tell you you can't do that because you are a female or you're not good enough or you don't come from the right background or whatever it is. And I know it's difficult and it can be daunting, particularly stepping into something like, oil and gas. So I know of one female that's working on an oil platform at the moment. I know there are a couple more out there, but as you can tell, it's not overly populated. That can be a daunting environment to step into. I always say to people, go in as yourself. Don't try to be somebody else because they'll uncover it pretty quickly and it'll mess things up for you anyway. Have a sense of humour and be willing to actually call people on the fact that they're either doing something that's inappropriate or something that makes you feel uncomfortable, but in a way that doesn't necessarily put them off.
Right.
And that goes for both, for everybody basically, because you've got, young boys out there who want to become, primary school teachers or nurses or, be a personal assistant and, are running against the social norms that's not a manly job,
right,
so to speak, and young girls out there that are discovering that they love all things mechanical and are dealing with being told that they're not girly enough because they're not out chasing boys at the age of 10 or whatever it is that's going on. And, we need to, as a collective, help break this down. And part of the way to do that is to encourage them to actually follow those dreams, because if they've got a talent for it, who am I to tell them not to do it?
I agree, and it's more hurtful to society if you do that. So
exactly, because we're not getting the innovation.
Innovation, and you're putting another person out there that's got a soul-sucking job, and there's no passion in it. So
yeah.
So, what you kind of mentioned this earlier, you're working on a bookshop, but is there something that you are currently working on that you'd like to talk about? Like, I know your book that recently came out.
Yeah, so I've got my new book, Up the Ladder in a Skirt, which is available on Amazon on Kindle at the moment, and you can also order it online through my website in hard copy. So my website's easy because it's uptheladderinnaskirt.com. Okay. just to make it simple for you. And, I'm also putting together an online course which I'm launching, which works through some of the basic principles that are discussed within the book, and that will be available in the coming months. And once again, you can access that through if you follow me on social media, you'll be able to keep up to date when that actually goes live and be able to get in on the ground level, because I have run this course as a live course, but I'm trying to bring it online just to give it a little bit more availability and get it out a little bit further. And so there will be a deal for the first people that get in on it, just because they're the first people to get in on it. And, I want to be able to give them the opportunity for, feedback and things like that on how I can improve the course and make it even better, and also for them to get the most out of it.
Well, I will make sure I put the link to your book and all your social media and the website in the show notes. So thank you for sharing that. And
you're welcome.
Just kind of wrap up here. Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you'd be saddened if we didn't bring up on the show?
Do you know what? To be honest, not really, because we have actually gone over a quite wide blanket of things. But I would just like to say that part of the reason I was attracted to your show and why I'm really enjoying having a chat to you is because you do talk about that being open and being vulnerable. And I think it is very important that you do step into being authentically you, that you actually are open and you do step into those vulnerabilities, because without doing that, then you actually don't allow yourself to really grow and be yourself, to really grow into your fullest potential.
I agree, and thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that, Maggie. Well, thank you very much for coming on to the show and sharing your story. It took a twist I didn't expect there in the beginning, and but honestly, that's great, and I loved it. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
I really enjoyed that discussion with Maggie, and just loved how she doesn't allow societal norms to dictate her life. She came out with where she was discussing when she came out with bipolar, working in male-dominated industries, and just challenging the status quo, and she's been really successful at that. And other things, just following your dreams. Don't let society tell you what you can or cannot do. If you have a dream, go for it. Try it out. And the key items I think I took away from this is really obviously, not letting society to tell you what to do or not, but really having those relationships in your life. And, she talked about her partner and her supportive friends. It's really important, and especially in a time today where social media is so prevalent in our lives, where we forget to connect with those that are directly right there in front of us. And we just, hey, I'm going to go on and make this tweet or this post on Facebook or whatever. And, it distracts us from developing the people that are right in our physical life. So I felt that was a really strong and meaningful part that she shared with us that I really enjoyed.
Thanks for listening to the UpRev Ninja podcast with your host, Tom Hudson. Navigate to our website at uprev.ninja today, where you will find additional resources to help you discover the best version of you. While you're there, join our newsletter and join the discussion on your favorite social media platforms. We've got some awesome guests lined up to share with us how they are becoming the best versions of themselves. Again, thank you for listening. Now it's time to go out and uprev your life.
If you haven't, please head on over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review for the show. By doing so, this helps the show get noticed by more listeners and helps spread the word of how to discover the best version of yourself. Also, if you have any feedback about the show or a guest that you would like, please go to my website, https://uprev.ninja and contact me. This week's review comes from Bobby Aggie 98. This is a great concept for a podcast. We all need additional guidance at times, and hearing what works for others is very beneficial. Keep up the great work.